Hello, American Crochet Association. Salena Baca here, founder, host, lead educator with the ACA, and I'm here to do something new and different with you guys. In our group, if you're not already a member, come on over and join group:\American Crochet Association. You can find the link in the video description. Come on over and join today. I love to ask questions and just make it a fun conversation over there. Hopefully we can learn some things, we can share some information, we can all just help each other to kind of better our craft. So something new that I started doing is something new that Facebook is kind of doing, right? Facebook is always doing things that are different and new. And they have these posts that prompt questions and answers. And it's just kind of meant to be an open dialogue and conversation and just kind of get resources and information to your community. So I just started doing this, and some of our members posted questions within that thread. So what I'd like to do here is go through that thread, read out those questions, and give the best information that I possibly can on them. The reason I wanted to do this is that we have tons of resources and information and courses and workshops and trainings at the American Crochet Association. And so not only are these questions a fun conversation, but it's also an opportunity for us to share some information that maybe you just didn't realize that we had, okay? And if we don't have answers, then we'll find answers. We'll find resources together, all right? So if you guys are watching live, come on over, say hey, say hello, tell me where you're viewing from. If you guys have any questions for me today while I'm streaming here live, again, I'm here live on Facebook, go on ahead and post them. If you're watching this on the replay, just follow along like you're here live. Go on ahead and post questions. We'll still try to go back and answer them as we see them. Okay, so I'm going to read the first question, give you guys an opportunity to come on over and say hey, say hello. And then after I go through this first question, I'm going to see who's here and give some shout outs, okay? All right, so my first question is from Sue. And Sue writes, I have been seeing the Norwegian crochet where the stitches are crocheted to look like knitting. Have you done any of this? So what I love about this question is that Sue is actually also in another group that I run, Salena Baca Crochet. And she asked the same question a couple weeks ago. So I'm so glad that she brought it up in this group too, because I've seen this question before from Sue, and we had this conversation. So when Sue asked this question a couple weeks ago, I had never heard of Norwegian crochet, and I thought, am I missing out on some new method or technique? So on the bit of research that I did, I couldn't find anything specific in terms of Norwegian crochet being a method or a technique. I could be wrong, so if I'm wrong, you guys let me know. The only thing that I could find in terms of Norwegian crochet was, patterns that are written in the Norwegian language. So not necessarily a certain technique or method or anything different. So I will say that about Norwegian crochet. So again, that we may have a bit more digging to do, but again, I haven't found anything different. So let me know if there is something contrary to that or something additional. But what I will say, Sue, is that there's quite a few methods and techniques, combinations of crochet that you can do that does look like knitting. I'll give one example, and I'll also share some resources in the video description. Tunisian crochet is actually very knit-like. It's actually done on a long crochet hook. It's either very long and it has a stopper on the end, or it's, if you're doing something really, really long, then it's got some extra length on the end, right? And it really just kind of mimics one knitting needle, but with that hook at the end. So it's kind of the best of both worlds in crochet. So we have quite a few video tutorials to learn Tunisian crochet and see what tool it uses and how to use that tool. So I'm going to share those video resources with you that you can also find just on our YouTube channel. In addition to Tunisian crochet, I know that there are different places you can There are different placements for stitches. There's different combinations of stitches that can also mimic knitting. So there's tons of variety out there. But for now, I will just say I think Tunisian is very knit-like, and it'll give you that wonderful knit look, that fabric that you're looking for. Okay, so that was our first question from Sue. And now I'm going to take a moment because I see so many of you guys are here and just chiming in. So shout outs to everybody like DePauli. Thank you for being here and saying hello. DePauli says, it's my birthday today. DePauli, happy birthday. I hope you have a wonderful birthday, and I hope you just feel loved, and I hope you eat some excellent food, and I just hope it's a wonderful day for you. Happy birthday, DePauli. Thank you for being here too on your birthday. All right, we also see just a ton of people watching, so I'm just giving shout outs if you want a shout out. Margaret is here. Hello, Margaret. So good to see you. Sherry Williams is chiming in from New York. Good to see you too. Margaret says, I'm loving that shade of green for your sweater. It looks cute on you. Thank you. I think I only have about 3 colors that I wear. So green, gray, and black. I think that's kind of where it is. So anytime I see this color green, my husband even laughs at me. It's like, another green shirt. Yes, another green shirt. So thank you, Margaret. All right, Margaret. Margaret has an interesting point. She says, do you mean mosaic yoke crochet? Is that what you mean? Then yes, I've done one. I think, I don't know what she means by Norwegian crochet. Other than, and I'm glad that you brought up mosaic, because mosaic is kind of like a color work. You know, it's all about stitch placement and what you're doing with your yarn. So potentially, instead of Norwegian crochet, Sue might mean Fair Isle as a color work technique, because there are Fair Isle sweaters, and of course Fair Isle, we know that in crochet and knitting as well, as just a color work method. So it's not, you know, you're really just working basic stitches, but the Fair Isle method just means what is it that you're doing with the color that you're not using, because you're using multiple colors within this fabric to give it that Fair Isle look. So Fair Isle is also known as stranded crochet, because whatever color you're not using, you see that strand of yarn on the back or the wrong side of your fabric. And that way, Fair Isle crochet creates one right side and one back side, because the back side just has all those floating strands on the back. So Norwegian crochet could mean kind of a nod to the Fair Isle, but I'm not certain, but there's that information as well. So good point. I'm glad you brought that up, Margaret. DePauli, she says, thank you, Salena, enjoying my day. Just wanted to check in. You go have fun. Go eat some birthday cake. Kick your feet up. Margaret also says, Margaret, I'm so glad you're making this a conversation. You're just jumping in. She says there's a knit crochet stitch that looks just like knitting. She says you do the first row as normal single crochet, and the second row you put in between the single crochet stitch bars. Yeah, I've seen that as well, and I've seen it called a few different things, like a shallow single. I'd have to look up, kind of the standard term on that, but I've seen a few different terms for that. And again, it's that's another method that could make your fabric look more knit-like. But you're really just utilizing, a basic crochet stitch, single, half, double, double, those are the basic ones. But you're just varying the placement of the stitch in some way that alters the fabric. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because yeah, there's tons of stitches like that are a lot of fun to try. So many people are saying hey to DePauli. She's such a colorful part of our community. So of course everyone loves her and is saying happy birthday. Sharon Osborne is here. Thank you for being here. She says, I love Tunisian. So many beautiful stitches. Yeah, there's a lot of possibility with that. All right, guys. So I've got one question down. I just have a few more to go. And of course, all of these questions come from our post in our Facebook community that I'm going through and I'm answering here now, just because I thought this would be fun, right? Okay, so the next question that I see in our group is from Gail. And Gail says, can you direct me to a good article on how to read diagrams? You two and I are not friends. Online tutorials don't work for me. She says, what is a good way to learn how to read diagrams? I'm so glad that you're asking that question. And you're also saying that, you know, YouTube and video tutorials, you know, they're just, you know, that's not how you learn. And I totally understand that. You know, we learn in different ways. You know, for example, I want to hear it. I want to see it. I want to watch you do it. I want to watch a video on it. I want to see it. Like, I just need to experience in a lot of different ways. So I completely understand that. So Gail, I will say this. We actually have a few courses that teach not only pattern reading, but specifically diagram reading. So I'm going to share those pieces of information that are part of larger courses. And I welcome you to come check them out because I think that they really will help give you multiple ways to learn diagram reading so that you really can feel confident. It's not just a video. It's not just written information. You know, we also have a little bit of things that you can try. So, okay, this is what a diagram is. This is how you read it. This is what it looks like. Now, here's a pattern that you can try, a really small, simplistic one so you can understand. So I'll share that resource with you so that if you're interested, I hope you come on over and check it out. But this is what I will say about diagrams for anybody who is just like, I don't understand. It doesn't make sense. It's not my friend. Let me say this. So every diagram is like a map, okay? And every map should have a key. And a key is essentially giving you every single character that is represented in that diagram, and it gives you a definition for it. It tells you what that character is supposed to mean. And what I like about crochet, crochet diagrams specifically, and these crochet symbols, is that most of them, especially the basic ones, and that's where I suggest you start. So if you're looking at a pineapple stitch motif that's 37 stitch repeat by, 27 rows, that may not be where you start in terms of diagram reading, right? So I really suggest you start on a really small basic scale, much like, as if you were learning crochet for the first time, because you really have to pair the symbols with the stitches, and that should make sense for you. And that way, whenever you see a symbol, you're going to go, oh, this T means half double crochet. This T with a line through it, that means double crochet. This little plus sign like this, that means single crochet. This circle, that means chain. This dot means slip stitch. Those are all pretty universal, and that's where I would suggest you start, right? So you have a key. It gives you those symbols that is going to be represented in the diagram, and it tells you what that symbol is. Now, those symbols are going to be universal. So it's not like, a plus on this diagram means single crochet, but over here it means front post double crochet. It doesn't really work that way. So there are universal symbols, and those symbols can be kind of combined to make those diagrams, whatever the pattern is. So diagrams are going to show you, or most often they're going to show you a sample of work, right? It's not going to be the entire pattern unless it's a washcloth or something really small or a motif. So sometimes a diagram is just going to show you maybe there's a sweater pattern, but there's a stitch repeat on it that's a little confusing. Let's say it is a tiny little pineapple stitch, and maybe it's 12 stitches by 10 rows. It's just going to show you that repeat, and that way whenever you're following the instructions and you have 2 paragraphs of information, you can just kind of glance at that repeat diagram, and you can really clearly understand what the stitch placement is. So I'm just trying to give you a few different scenarios to when you would see a diagram and when you would need to read them. But I will say the most important thing about diagram reading are the symbols. And then just consider, how is the diagram constructed? Again, is it just giving you a small little stitch repeat? Is it representing an entire pattern? And if so, if it is representing an entire pattern or a repeat or something, consider you're going to read that exactly as if you're following either written instructions. What does that mean? Exactly as if you're working up the sample. Okay, so if there is a diagram that is some kind of motif that starts with an adjustable loop and maybe works outward. Maybe it's a square, maybe it's a flower, maybe it's a triangle. Just consider what the shape is and then consider where it starts and then just follow the follow how you would construct it, right? So if it's a motif, here, I actually have one right here. I have one right here. So if it's a circle motif and you're looking at a stitch diagram for this, you're gonna know, okay, it's worked from the center out. I can see all of these T's with lines through them. There's 12 all in this circle. Okay, that must mean, and then there's 3 circles right here. Those circles are chained, so I'm gonna chain 3. I'm gonna work 11 or 12 double crochet into this loop, and that's round 1. Okay, that makes sense. And then I'm gonna chain 3, and then I'm gonna work 2 double crochet into the same space, and then I'm gonna chain 1, and then I'm gonna skip 1. So you're literally going to follow that diagram as if you were actually constructing that piece. And it's the same thing if something is worked in rows. Do I have a sample here? Okay. I have swatches everywhere. So let's say you just have this diagram here, right? So you know that you have to chain a base. So look for those circles, right? Because circles are going to represent those chains. So, okay, you're going to chain so many, and then you have a turning chain of, let's say, 3, and then you're going to work 1 double crochet into each stitch across, and then you're going to chain 3, and so on and so forth, okay? So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. Diagram reading is understanding what the symbols are. The symbol should be represented in a key. That key should help you unlock the diagram. And then just think about what the diagram is. Is it a part of a pattern? Is it just a repeat? Is it an entire pattern? Is it worked in rows? Is it worked in rounds? And then you're literally just looking at every single little symbol, and that symbol represents an action that you take in crochet. So again, I know that was a lot of information. Hopefully that helped to make a little bit more sense in terms of diagram reading. And I do have some resources and courses, so I will be sharing that with you guys. All right, so that was the second question that we had in our group. I'm gonna go here and on the live, see who's here. Questions, comments, feedback. If you guys wanna have a deeper conversation about any of the questions that we're bringing up today, go on ahead and post that, okay? Because as long as I'm here live, we're gonna be diving in. Margaret, such a conversation starter. I love it. She says, oh, I love diagrams. I learned to crochet that way. My advice is to learn stitch symbols. Once you know what each stitch symbol is, it's very easy to repeat it. Margaret, I agree with you. Actually, I learned to read and follow diagrams before I learned to read and follow written instructions. So for me, when I learned to, I learned to crochet because someone told me, just do this. And it was like a granny square. And so I didn't even know what stitches were called. I was just kind of going through these motions, whatever they were. And then yes, later on in life and high school, we had art class, we could crochet. Wasn't that fantastic? I loved that. And our crochet tests were that you were given a diagram, and maybe it was, like a ripple stitch, or, it's filet crochet. It was some kind of intricate, like intermediate stitch work, but it was only about maybe 20 or 24 stitches across. And your grade was based on how many rows you completed. So if you did 100 rows, you got 100%. If you did 50 rows, you got 50%. You had like a week to do it or something like that. So anyway, short story long, I learned how to read and follow crochet diagrams before I learned to read and follow crochet patterns, those written patterns. And for me, I felt that diagrams helped me understand written patterns so much more. So I think that if you learn to read written patterns and diagrams, I think that both of those are going to be excellent tools to just, kind of help you understand crochet better. So I'm so glad you shared that, Margaret. That was a good one. Margaret also says, there's times I draw diagrams out from patterns that are written out because it makes more sense to me. Absolutely. And I do the same thing. So as a matter of fact, you may feel I can't read or follow diagrams, but you might already be writing things out. And if you've ever done that, just know that that's essentially what a diagram is. You know, if you've ever kind of handwritten, you know, your own little symbols and diagrams and things, just know that there are universal symbols that you can use that can kind of help you unlock understanding certain patterns better. So you're absolutely right, Margaret. I love it. You're such a great co-host today. I love it. All right. Oh, Angie says, loved your explanation of diagrams. I'm so glad. I'm so glad you did. Okay, fantastic. I have one more question to read in my group, or that was posted in my group that I'm going to be bringing here today. So again, anybody here watching live, if you have any crochet questions, you guys can post them here. And as soon as I get through this last one from our group, I'll be going back through your comments, okay? So I'd be happy to answer those. The last question I see is from Victoria. And she says, my treble is always so loose. How can I make the last loop that I pull through tighter? She says, I've tried having a tighter tension and it's still loose. That's a really interesting, it's a very specific question, but I can understand whenever you're trying to do something in crochet, if you're trying to create something and it's like, it's not doing what I want it to do, that can be very frustrating. So I'll give a few, I don't know if I have a one size fits all for this question, but I do have some things to share that will help you hopefully see maybe where this issue is coming from. So could this be tension? It could be, but she's saying that she already has a tight tension. So sometimes if your tension is already tight, or if you can't possibly comfortably make your tension any tighter, then there could be a few things, right? First and foremost, let's think about the treble stitch. The treble stitch is a very long, tall stitch. Treble is, I'm thinking of this as triple crochet because triple and treble, I think are the same thing. So whenever you're creating this, you're yarning over twice, you're inserting your hook, yarn over, pull through, you know, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, right? So by the time you do that, that's a very tall stitch. There's a lot of yarn in that, and there's a lot of loops in that. So if you're doing a lot of those stitches, your hand may tire after a while to where they are going to be just a bit more loose. So if you don't really want to tighten your tension, or if you don't like the look of it, you know, of course you might be trying to match a particular gauge in a pattern. Maybe you're making a sweater and you absolutely want it to be a size small. You don't want it to be a size extra, extra small or extra large or something. You may not be able to really adjust any further. You may just not like the look of that stitch. Or if gauge and size is not an issue, you can just maybe go down a hook size, and that will help to tighten not only your stitch, but your fabric as well. So you might be happier with that stitch, you know, if you're using a smaller hook than what your yarn indicates and pattern indicates. Or I will say this, it might be the yarn that you're using. And the reason I say that is that some yarns, they don't really have any stretch or give. I have so many samples here. Hold on one second. So some yarns are going to make your stitches and your fabric look loose. I don't want to say no matter what you do, but under normal standards, right? So this pattern calls for this hook. It has to be this size. If you're using something like cotton, do you see this? Can you guys see me? You guys can see me through this, right? So cotton isn't, it stays the same. There's no give in it, right? So whenever you're crocheting with something like cotton, it's probably going to have more air and space in it because there's no give, there's no bounce. If there was a little bit of bounce in this, my natural tension whenever I'm crocheting my stitches, if I'm pulling on that yarn ever so slightly, I'm lengthening it, and that way when the stitch is created, it's going to be a little smaller, right? Well, that's kind of what happens. So some yarn, if it has a little bit of bounce, your fabric might be a little bit smaller if you have a tighter tension. But if you're using something like cotton, or if you're using something that doesn't have any give, then you might have more space in your stitches. And you're really going to notice that with those taller stitches like treble crochet. Or if you're doing a lot with the stitches, like here's a basket weave right here, right? So it's, my fabric, you can actually kind of see through it. So when I was actually working this stitch with this, I thought, that's not really my favorite. And that's just personal taste. So you may create this with the exact same yarn and go, yep, I love that fabric. That's exactly what I want. So again, if you find that you want your stitch to be tighter, if you want your fabric to be tighter, it could be a few different elements. Now, again, before you just go changing things and doing whatever you want, if size and gauge is essential, you may not want to alter too many things. I think that tension, I caution people about really altering their tension because it could hurt your hands, but it could also make you crochet for a shorter period of time with more pain. So really you just want your tension to be something comfortable. So I would say alter your hook size or alter your yarn, because one of those two things could give you a better result or something that you're going to be happier with if you're not creating fabric that you love. So that's what I have to say on that. I know that it was a lot of information, I know it was a lot of information about that, but hopefully it made a little bit of sense. Essentially, I just hope that you think about what it is that you're making. And if you want to make something different in some way, hopefully that what I just said helps you to understand that there's quite a few variables involved in creating something different. And hopefully you're able to alter those variables to create something that you're really happy with. All right. Margaret, she says, thank you, lady. I appreciate you. Margaret says, that's a good question. I can relate to that. Can it be the way I hold my hook? Yeah, tension has a lot to do with the fabric that you're creating and what it looks like. It has a lot to do with it. But again, before you just start assuming it's my tension, I have to alter it. It could be the yarn that you're using. It could be whether or not that yarn has any give or any bounce. It could even be the style of hook that you're using. So, maybe when you're crocheting with this hook, your tension's different than when you're crocheting with this hook. Those are two completely different hook styles, right? So I've noticed that if my style of hook is different, then my tension and the fabric that I create, that can be different as well. Hello, Amy McKeever. So good to see you. Margaret says, everyone you pull through. Should the new loop height type that again, because I feel like there's some spell check in there, so it's hard to read and understand what your question is. Everyone you pull through, should the new loop height match start loop previous stitch height? Either say that another way or type it out a different way, because I think that there's some spell check in there that's making it hard. It's making it hard to read and follow that question. And I hope that you post it again, because that is the last comment that I see. And if it is, that's the end of this Ask Me Anything. I hope you enjoyed this. I do have some resources that I want to share for the different questions that were asked, so I'll be updating the video description with those. I really love having conversations like this, and I love when you guys bring questions about crochet over to our community. Feel free to post your crochet questions just directly in our community anytime, or anytime you see one of these Ask Me Anything posts in our American Crochet Association group, just know that your questions there could lead to video chats like this. I really enjoy video chats like this because it's a fun way to not only answer the questions that we get, but it really helps start a conversation like this, maybe leads to additional information and resources, or helps us just to kind of get the best information out there. Maybe there's questions here that you guys wouldn't even have thought to ask, and in that case, it makes these even more fun. All right, guys, and on that note, That's all we have for today. Oh, here she is, Margaret. She's reposted that last question, so let's go to that. She says, you know, every time you pull through a new loop, like double crochet, then should that loop height match the first loop, the previous finished double crochet loop height? So do you mean, should this double crochet match the height of this double crochet? That's the way I'm reading it. And if so, it entirely depends on your pattern. But let's just assume, let's take it to its very basic form. Your stitches should all be uniform. So even though this is just solid double crochet fabric right here, yeah, so all the stitches should be uniform in width and height. And just the more practice you have, the more you crochet, the more that will happen. When won't that happen? That, you know, there's a few scenarios. It could be your pattern. Maybe you're creating a certain kind of pattern that, you know, I don't like to talk in absolutes, and that's why I'm kind of rambling a little bit here. Or you might be working with a yarn that's like a slub yarn. Slub is like thick, thin, so it's like thicker and then thinner and then thicker and then thinner. And in that case, of course, your stitches aren't always going to be uniform. You know, if your last stitch is all thin yarn, then it's going to be little and thin. And if your next stitch is all, you know, the larger part of the yarn, then it's going to be big. So should your stitch, yes, your stitches should be uniform. However, there's a lot of circumstances. There could be a lot of variables that could make your stitches different. So just understanding that, again, if you're working with slub yarn or your pattern or something like that. All right, Margaret's rephrasing again. I'm not answering her question. She says, no, you yarn over, then you pull through. So the next pull through, should that match the height or not? So should the first part match the second part? I want to say in terms of ratio, I want to say no, because it's a little different, just because I'm simply looking at my double crochet stitches, and the first part looks, let's just, you know, it looks like it's 2/3 of the stitch, just because whenever, and again, we're just talking about double crochet here. When the way I crochet, the way my stitches look is that whenever I yarn over, insert hook into stitch, yarn over, pull through stitch, yarn over, pull through 2 loops on hook, that part is longer. That part is longer right here. Here you can see that this is the yarn, this is the first 2 loops right here. And then the second 2 loops are up here, that final yarn over and pull through. So really the first part, to me, it looks like it's 2/3. The last part is just 1/3. So no, I don't think it's supposed to be even. However, if the yarn that you're using or your personal tension looks a little different, maybe if it does look a little more 50-50, it might actually look more like a half double crochet than a double. You might actually have tension that is too tight, I would assume. So I would say, no, you'd want it more to be maybe 2/3, possibly 2/3, 1/3. Maybe I answered your question that time. I'm not sure. If not, let me know. We'll go from there. We'll have a whole other video chat about it, okay? All right, everybody, that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for chiming in. Thank you to Donna Walker for being here, Shalina, Margaret, Karen, V, Diane, Tanya. I lost you guys. I'm rotating Facebook. Of course, the end of the video is this way. It's not switching back. All right, good time to say thank you guys for being here, and I'll see you next time. Peace, love, crochet. Bye-bye. It's just not letting me log off. Oh, this is hilarious.